Okay, so here we have a product brought to us by one of our customers, and this product specifically had been in storage for about 20 months, so almost 2 years. You can see the product was wrapped up in a tarp, which is good because it will provide some protection during transportation. However, the storage conditions for this particular piece were maybe not as ideal as they could be. So they brought it to us anticipating that it needs some repairs. And we are about to unroll this and see what we find and begin our inspection process. Now, one thing we have already noticed without unrolling it much is the protective tarp has some holes chewed into it. And then this right here is a sign of something you don't want to see. This right here is a rodent's nest. And so I anticipate finding probably a good amount of chew holes through our product, as well as some other rodent nests inside of here. This is what you do not want to see. So if you're walking through your storage unit, looking at your inflatables, you see chew holes in your protective covers, you see rodent nests like this, that's a problem. You're gonna wanna look into that closer. Definitely well before you plan on opening your water. So one other thing that I've noticed so far is here we have, I wouldn't say an area of concern, but I do know that this product was stored inside of an enclosed trailer. So it had a roof over it, but it wasn't apparently watertight, as I'm seeing a lot of moisture and water in this area of the product, which is gonna lead to mildew, mold, and deterioration of the vinyl material. So this is something that you don't want to see when it comes to storing your inflatables. Okay, so it's my understanding that this piece is about 2 years old, or it served 2 seasons, but again, like I said, it had been in storage for almost 2 years. So you can see by the bright colors that it's fairly new. My initial observation when I look at this area, as you can tell, this is significantly more discolored than that area down there. And that's going to be due to the moisture that we found on the tarp in this section. The good news so far is I haven't seen any other rodent nests, with the exception of the one that we found down here, which is going to be the biggest concern. The mildew, the mold, we can shine this up, we can get this clean, but it's really the damage caused by the rodents that we're concerned about. So this is the area that which we found the rodent nest. Okay, as you can see by this serious discoloration, you can see a lot of rodent feces there. This is likely urine or other staining due to the rodents just calling this home for a while. But the fortunate thing about this is that in this particular area, I don't see any chew holes, and I'm blown away by the fact that I don't, because typically they will chew holes through this material and make it look like Swiss cheese. So before we put air to this piece and try to inflate it, considering the fact that the rodent nest was right here, I'm gonna ask Tyler to help me pull this section, this part of the inflatable back over so I can see the underside of this, just to make sure I don't see any large chew holes on this side of the inflatable. And since we don't see any evidence of rodents down on that side of the inflatable, we're gonna hope that the piece of the product that the rodents were close to was only this end. And assuming we don't find anything on the bottom, then we're gonna go ahead and hook our blowers up to this piece. We're gonna inflate it, and then we'll spray it down with soapy water to see if we can find any holes. So, but first, we'll get Tyler to give me a hand. We're just gonna pull this part back a little bit. We're taking a look for any chew holes, scratches. Sometimes rodents like to scratch at the product, so they don't necessarily chew their way entirely through the piece. But I think we're in luck, is I'm not seeing any evidence of any damage to the material other than the discoloration and staining on the other side, which is good. But I've seen chew holes big enough to fit my head inside of, and dozens of them on a piece this size. So take this very, very seriously. And let's keep our fingers crossed that this piece continues to give us good news and is in fact not damaged by these rodents. Okay, so we got our piece fully inflated, and I started spraying the piece down with my soapy water, looking for air bubbles, representing an air leak. And I did find this section. Now this section obviously stands out for more than one reason. You can see where some kind of tape material has been applied to this area. And you see this when camp customers or just any customer decides to use something like Flex Seal tape, which is I don't want to recommend it by any means. It's a decent Band-Aid fix to a problem. However, in the long term, it causes more problems than it does good because removing it is very, very difficult. And then putting a permanent patch on top of the residue left by the tape can be a little bit problematic. So anyway, as I was spraying down this piece looking for air bubbles, I noticed that. So we've got an air leak at the top of this tape section. So the next thing I'm going to do is deflate the product fully, start peeling off this tape, work on getting the residue cleaned off of the vinyl material around this area, assess the damage, and then attempt my repair. Okay, so now we've got our piece fully deflated. And I went ahead and I removed that area of sealant tape. I'm assuming it was something similar to like a Flex Seal tape, which I mentioned previously that stuff is definitely not the right way to fix any of these air leaks and actually can cause problems moving forward when you do a permanent repair like we're about to do. I'll show you what we found. So talking about the Flex tape in previous repairs, if you look closely here, you can see this staining. That's actually glue residue that I've been unable to get removed. I've used some sandpaper, but you have to be careful doing that. And I've also used our methyl ethyl ketone, our MEK, to clean this area and try and get as much of that residue off as possible. Regarding the hole that I found, you can obviously see there's one large hole. There's also a small area right next to it. And the small area looks perfectly consistent with what you're gonna see when rodents start to chew and or scratch at this material. So with 100% confidence, I can say that this hole at one point was caused by a rodent. We're gonna start by giving it one more clean with our MEK. And you'll notice I've actually already cut my patch for this area. So we'll clean this area, clean the patch, then we're gonna put our glue on. You notice my patch has rounded corners. It's very important not to have sharp corners because those peel up much easier than rounded corners. The glue that we're gonna be using, the only glue you need to use when doing these repairs is HH66. Okay, this is specifically made for gluing this type of material, and it's a heat activated glue. So you can't just put glue on your patch and your area you're patching and then push those two together. You have to use a heat gun. You'll notice right here there's a dial. It's a heat setting for your heat gun. I just go right in the middle of that spectrum. Hottest to coolest is really the sweet spot for this HH66 glue. When you're using your heat gun, this part gets very, very hot. Make sure when you set this down, you don't set it down like that. It will burn a hole through your inflatable. So whenever I'm done with this, I'll set it off to the side in a safe place and we'll be good to go. So again, I'm going to take my MEK and give this one more wipe down. Make sure there's no dirt, specks of debris that could land in my patch. When you turn on that heat gun, obviously it's blowing hot air. So if you've got sand anywhere around your patch, it will blow the sand into your glue, which can kind of compromise the integrity of the bond between the patch material and your inflatable. Okay, so I've got both of these pieces clean. I'm going to lay my patch centered over my hole. Typically I'll use something like a pencil, less noticeable than this red marker, but for this video, I'm going to use this red marker. I'm going to trace my patch, it's time to apply the glue. Now we're going to apply this glue to both surfaces, okay? And some people like to use a lot of glue. I will tell you that less is more with this, so don't get carried away. You do want an even coat of glue, but you don't want it running. You don't want gobs of it, because as you'll see when you heat it with the heat gun, this glue can start to bubble. Bubble means air pockets. Air pockets will expand and contract as the seasons change, and that can weaken the integrity of the bond between the materials. So now I've got full coverage on both of these, and you'll notice, if you can see, I've gone about an 1/8 inch wider than my trace line. That way, if I go to set it down, and this is especially important with bigger patches, if I go to set it down, I'm just a little bit off of my line, it's okay, and I'll still have full coverage of glue on both surfaces. So now, we'll take our heat gun, and you're gonna wanna alternate going back and forth between this area and your patch, 10 or 15 seconds per, kind of a circular motion. And you'll notice I'm not right up on it. I'm giving it a little bit of distance, maybe 6 or 8 inches from the tip of my heat gun down to the area I'm heating. You don't want to stay in one place too long, so just keep moving it around. So now it's important to have a tool, kind of like this one I have here. It's essentially a firm, putty knife or spatula with dull edges, so that when I go to apply the patch, I can use this to apply, a lot of force and kind of smush that patch on to ensure that it's got full contact throughout, and this will also help me push out any air bubbles that may get trapped underneath my patch. Okay, so now that we've got both areas heated, I want to move relatively quickly. I'm going to grab my patch, start on one side, trying to apply as best as I can within the lines I drew. Get one side down, grab my spatula, and push towards the other. And you notice I'm working from the middle out. In case there are any air bubbles there, I want to work them to the edge. Okay. The patch has been applied. Now the best thing to do is to put some kind of pressure on this. If you've got the time, let it sit under pressure for 24 hours. You could get a couple of cardboard boxes, maybe they've got magazines or newspapers in them, something like that. A sandbag is great because it conforms to the shape. If you're able to put it under pressure, do so. If not, let this be, ideally for about 24 hours before you reinflate this product. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna get pressure on this, wait 24 hours for the glue to cure, and then we'll be back to reinflate this piece. We'll spray it down with soapy water again, see if we find any air bubbles, and hopefully this hole has been fixed. Okay, so now that we've got our piece reinflated, it's time to inspect to make sure that our repair indeed was successful. So we're gonna do that with our soapy water again. We'll just take our soapy water, spray down the area really well where we completed that repair. And we'll give that a minute to show any bubbles. It looks to me like we are good to go. So this repair was successful. It's not a bad idea when you spray things down just to watch it for another, say, 30 seconds or so. But before this video, I'd actually double checked to make sure this repair was good. So I know it's holding and holding well. So this piece has been repaired and it's good to go back into service. So I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.